Good morning, DGen Nation fam. What has happened? Happy holidays to you and yours. It's the DGen Nation podcast. We're here for the Week 16 DraftKings NFL DFS breakdown show. Your hosts are here. Ryan Williams at Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me, joined by my two usual co-hosts here as well. The Godfather himself, Mr. Kevin Steele, Fantasy Rat 13 is where you can find him on Twitter. And then we got Matty Buckets, Matty 2v2, Matty DFS. Fellas, how we doing? Happy holidays. You guys ready for this?
Yeah, happy holidays. Merry Christmas to everybody. Ate a lot of food this week. Got to see some family, so all was good over here. Ready to dive back into NFL. Alvin Kamara gave a lot of people a good Christmas present last night. So,
a lot of people, as in who, Matty? He ain't come here. The Grinch came here.
Yeah, the Grinch came to you two guys, but for me in my third place matchup in one of my leagues, he started me off right. But yeah, I mean 6 touchdowns and can we just talk about Sean Payton real fast? Like, what is he thinking giving Taysom Hill a carry at the 1 yard line when Kamara could have had 7 touchdowns? Like, what are you doing?
Dude, see, and this is going to go into my analysis on Taysom Hill, like next year going forward. Like, how many times have I said this dude effing loves Taysom Hill? Like, I don't know if they share the same bed. I don't know, like, what's going on there. But this guy absolutely loves this kid, like, enough to take away a career record-breaking touchdown accolade from Alvin Kamara. And he knew that Alvin had it because he was in that entire drive. It made zero sense to me. Like, they gave him that first carry. He gets down there and then, okay, come on out. What? So, and in typical Saints fashion, they get back into the red zone under the 2 minutes. So he was able to get it, but that was crazy. Kev, how you doing?
Fantastic. We got football again today, another 3-game slate on Saturday, and then the big one tomorrow for the main slate, because we all know Week 17 is a fucking dumpster fire, and how unpredictable that is. So this is kind of the last week before the playoffs, so we get to enjoy all this football this weekend. So, not to mention the fact that we are only 1 subscriber away from 1,000. So that was our big goal this entire year, was to hit 1,000 subscribers this year. We started from the bottom. In like August or late July, we were at like 100, and to be almost at 1,000 in that short of a time span is amazing. It's a testament to all the hard work of everybody, the behind the scenes here, and also all the great community we've built along the way. So that's been a good, solid Christmas present. So tomorrow we're going to be giving away a bunch of stuff. The big grand prize is going to be that signed Allen Robinson jersey you see to the right of your screen. We're going to be giving that away. It's an authentic Allen Robinson jersey, I might add, which is sick. And then we're also going to be giving away a bunch of other stuff, too, tomorrow on the Game Day Show. So just shout out to everybody for getting us to where we are, and all the people that have helped along the way.
Absolutely, Kev. Couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, everybody who's the subscriber. I mean, we appreciate all of the love that we've been getting. Everybody who's subscribed, who's liked the videos, who's interacted with our live streams, with the start and sit show that the guys have been doing, the early waiver wire show, rankings, everything, and the one-off videos that have been going out for Dynasty, Redraft, and DFS. It's just been fun to share the wealth with the TFA family, with the DGen Nation fam, and we're excited for everything going on for this season and going into 2021. It's going to be big things here for the DGen Nation, so you guys definitely want to keep rocking with us. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do subscribe. I mean, like Kevin said, we got the giveaway going on. Probably some other things that we'll have planned for you guys as we're winding down the regular season, but heading into the playoffs. And the DJ Nation pod will still be here for the playoffs to kind of get you guys covered there through those weeks. So, boys, without any further ado, let's get it. It was funny for me to kind of start it off saying good morning, because usually we're doing this at like the wee hours of the night. So we're going into the Saturday slate here, but we're going to talk about the Sunday slate first, the main slate, and then try and hit on some things before we leave you guys today on what we're thinking for the Saturday slate. By then, we should have a little bit of news for some of these kind of question marks that are going on with that slate. But let's start it off with the Sunday slate, boys. And we got it. First of all, this is episode 95 of the DJ Nation, so we got 5 more to hit 100. That's exciting. But as we start off this show, I think it's going to be funny. Maddie, we talking before the podcast started, just talking about kind of the week for you, and how it's just the holiday weeks. I feel like are always weird, and that's the same thing with me. And we usually don't have like a Friday showdown slate and a Saturday, 3-game slate that we're doing before the Sunday slate. So I feel like a lot of I can speak for myself at least, that a lot of the focus for the Sunday slate has kind of gone to a little bit of the wayside. And I think that that's going to happen for a lot of people because there's so much other stuff to focus on. And then, yesterday was NBA too. So now we come into a Sunday slate. We have no Derrick Henry. We have no Saints. We have no Dalvin Cook. We have Christian McCaffrey will be missing. And so we kind of have these teams like the Houston Texans, the Chicago Bears, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Chiefs are still on the slate, and that's fun. But like the Cleveland Browns, we have these weird teams that we have not really been mainly, attacking for fantasy goodness, that all set up in kind of pretty good spots. So it kind of feels weird going into the slate. And so I just kind of wanted to kind of allude to that at the top. But let's talk about these quarterbacks and kind of where you guys' heads at are right now. I'll start it off.
We just hit 1,000.
Say it again.
Sorry. We just hit 1K.
Oh, there we go.
Let's go.
Okay, shout it out. We should have had the buzzer ready to go. We could have dropped confetti on the streams and whatnot. Shout out to everybody. 1K. Appreciate that. That's awesome. Onward upward from here. So definitely love to hear that. So quarterback this week, Kev, I'm not even going to steal the thunder from you. I know you're going to talk about Mitchell Trubisky. I hope he has a good game for us going against Jacksonville there for the Chicago Bears team. I mean, he's been lighting it up. He comes in at 5,700 this week. That's interesting. But at the top, Deshaun Watson, he's 7,600, and that's not usually. It makes it hard to kind of pay that price tag, I guess, for him there. But when we're looking at kind of what he's been doing, 4 or 3 out of the past 4 games, he's got 24 or more DK points. He's going against a Cincinnati team. I think people will think about that Cincinnati defense kind of being better than they were because of the Steelers game that just happened and how they limited Big Ben. But we were all watching that game. Like, Big Ben has been struggling with the deep ball for some time. Offensive line was struggling. The only bright spot on that Steelers team was Benny Snell. And so we're looking at this Houston team who does love to pass. They kind of banded the run last week, even when David Johnson, kind of being back in the fold, him seeing 11 targets was crazy. So even more so that they want to pass. Duke Johnson and I think CJ Prosise there were banged up a little bit. So that'll be something to monitor if those two guys miss. But getting Brandon Cooks back healthy, Kiki's there, Aiken's there. This Cincinnati game, I kind of like going to Deshaun Watson there at the top. Still offers you some rushing upside. I think he could, really be good for you in tournaments. Jalen Hurts down here at 7,000. I mean, if you're playing cash games this week, I think you just start with him. I mean, I've seen some people talking about that. They don't know, the Dallas defense has looked a little bit better, and Jalen Hurts is not, in the top 5K range, low 6K range anymore. But it's like, what else do you need to see from this guy to make you want to play him? I mean, 74 pass attempts in the past 2 weeks, so you're getting passing work there. 338 yards last week with 3 passing touchdowns, 100 yards rushing in that New Orleans game, 63 yards against Arizona, and a touchdown. I mean, he's doing it all. I do like running back on that side, and we can talk about that later. But Jalen Hurts, I think, for me is the guy that I would start for with cash games. And then kind of in that same breath too, it doesn't feel great, but I'm looking at Andy Dalton a little bit at his price tag at 5,500. Just with how you can stack him, distribution of targets, I feel like there, and Philadelphia has a better run defense, I think, than people will think about. And so maybe this is a game where we can get Andy Dalton and Amari Cooper connection. You're looking at the pieces; they're not that expensive to pair him with. And then I know Michael Gallup was on the injury report, but he's now been a full participant this week, so he's going to be back and playing, and he's only 4,100 as well too. So that game could be interesting for me too to put up points. So that's the three guys that I'm looking at. Maddie, I guess I'll go to you next and kind of just see where your head's at here with quarterback this week.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on Deshaun already. He's definitely near the top of my list. Don't really need to go into him too much. I mean, Houston hasn't really relied on the run game all year. Over the last 4 weeks in one-score games, Houston ranks third in pass rate at 66%, behind only Pittsburgh and Atlanta. So, even though David Johnson did have a good game last week, I'm still expecting Deshaun to throw a bunch here and to not really have a path of resistance facing him on the other side. So he's definitely at the top of my list. Jalen Hurts is the other guy that I'm really looking at. I think the narrative surrounding the Dallas defense being a bit better is a little fluky. As I mean, you go back to the Minnesota game. Minnesota put up 28 points, and that was a bit of a shootout. Washington in Week 12, that was a close game until the fourth quarter, but then Washington just took over, and that was the Antonio Gibson show where they put up 41. Dallas really hasn't had a run defense all year, and Jalen Hurts has looked like Lamar Jackson from last year. Lots of rushing attempts, approaching the 100-yard mark. He had over 100 yards in his first game, was close to it in his second game. So anytime you can get a quarterback who's going to run that much for $7K and still has the ability to throw for over 300 yards, I'm going to sign up for that. And then, Baltimore scored 34 points on Dallas. The Cincy game where they only scored 7 points, that was a weird game because Cincy actually moved the ball into the red zone multiple times. And then they had 3 or 4 fumbles, 2 from and it's like it killed drives. And, Dallas was able to just control that game from start to finish because of Cincy's red zone miscues. But had Cincy not turned that ball over, I think the Bengals would have been closer to the 25-point threshold. So, and then last week you look at San Francisco was able to score 33 against them. So yeah, Jalen Hurts, top of my list. Absolutely love him this week. And then I'm not getting cute with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being hurt. I think a lot of people are going to go to Le'Veon Bell, which makes sense on non-Mahomes teams, right? 5,800 against Atlanta, who has been pretty solid against the run this year. But they have, given it up to pass-catching running backs. So while I do like Le'Veon Bell this week, I think with Edwards-Helaire being out, we know Kansas City has wanted to throw the ball all year. And you're missing your starting running back. A lot of people want to play the backup running back, and for good reason. But why not just give Mahomes 5 to 10 more extra attempts, right? So I think he's going to go unowned because of his $8,500 price tag, and people can play Jalen Hurts for $1,500 less. But we know Mahomes has 6 touchdown upside, just like Alvin Kamara showed us last night. So if a guy throws for 6 touchdowns, you got to have him regardless of what price he is. So yeah, I really like Mahomes this week against Atlanta in a game that could very easily shoot out.
I like that you brought that up, Maddie, because the price tags are so inflated for KC. We'll talk about it at tight end, but Kelsey coming in at 8.5 is absolutely outrageous for DraftKings. So it does make it tough to stack. But this is an offense that we know can put up the points, right, and can put kind of things out of reach. And Atlanta on the other side too. Like it's hard because Julio's out, but I was trying to talk myself into some Matt Ryan. It looks like ugly, but if this were like a playoff matchup or a Super Bowl matchup, I feel like the Falcons just go into every game and they just do the same thing regardless. Like they don't really care about where they end up in draft pick status or whatever. Like they just go out there and they're still out there playing, for something to win. Hell, look at the Tampa Bay game last week. They end up losing, but they had that game handedly in the bag and were looking like they were going to kill all of Tampa Bay's playoff hopes. So they still play for something. So that could keep the pace up in that game. Kevin, talk to us, buddy. Where are you at with quarterback this week?
I will say Pat Mahomes is going to be the most interesting guy on the slate because everybody's so priced up. I mean, you have to really want it to play Mahomes, Tyreek, or Kelsey, right? Because they're all above 8K, and so it does make it a little bit more difficult to make that build. They have the highest implied point total on the slate. They are at home. There will be some things you have to see. Like I know Tyreek right now is listed as questionable for Sunday, but I expect him to play. The Chiefs still need to win this game to really lock up their playoff hopes. They pretty much have it in the bag anyways. The home field advantage and the number 1 seed. It would take a lot of crazy things for Buffalo to be able to get it. Regardless of that, the Chiefs still need this game. There's no way they're going to rest their starters here. So for me, the guys that I want to play, that I'm probably going to have the most exposure to is one you already mentioned with Jalen Hurts. He's been a baller. I think like for me, like season long wise, like next year he's this year's Kyler Murray, and I think he has all that sort of upside. And I felt the same way. I felt like a lot of people were going to look at this Cowboys defense as they've been a lot better lately. And if you look over the last 4 weeks, they've 27th in passing yards allowed over the last 4 weeks. But you look at who they've played, it's been the 49ers, Bengals, Ravens, and Washington football team. None of these teams are like elite passing options, right? None of these teams are really going to air it out on you. All of them really want to run the football. And so I think a lot of that's smoke and mirrors. So I'm not worried about Jalen Hurts whatsoever. I think Jalen Hurts can smash this defense. And so, but I'm not going to go any further than that because you already talked about him. The other two that I really like Baker Mayfield at 6,100 here at his price tag. I know a lot of people are going to look at this and think that, well, the Browns are going to try to just establish the run. They're going to run the ball the entire time and not really air it out. But that's not really what the Browns have been doing as much over the last 4 weeks. Over the last 4 weeks, Baker Mayfield is QB5 over that span. He's third in passing yards, and two of which are 300-yard passing games. He was like 2 yards away from 3 of those being 300 yards passing games over the last 4 weeks. He is second in passing touchdowns, only behind Aaron Rodgers over that span. And over the last 3 weeks, the Browns have went from an offense that threw the ball only around roughly 48% of the time to 55% of the time. And on the season, Baker ranks 13th in red zone attempts, which is an 8th in air yards per attempt, 7th in deep ball completion percentage, and 12th in fantasy points per dropback. So there's a lot to like with Baker Mayfield. He's really starting to hit, kind of get hot. And for me, when you look at this matchup, you can certainly throw the ball. I do think that the Jets' run defense is going to take a little bit of a hit. But even over the last 4 weeks, they've still allowed the second most fantasy points to the position. Or the second fewest, to the position. Obviously, it's a little bit of a downgrade losing Quinnen Williams now on that run defense. So that is something to monitor. But overall, I still think that, we know that teams can throw all over this Jets defense. And whether you want to pair them with Jarvis Landry, who's in an elite spot, whether you want to pair him with Rashard Higgins, who, somebody I've shit on earlier this year, who has really started to become more and more involved in this offense. And, Austin Hooper, I think, are all directions you can go, and none of them are really all that expensive. So it's kind of a cheap stack to be able to get some one-off to whether it's Tyreek or Travis Kelce or whatever you want to do there at the other positions. And so I really like Baker Mayfield. I think he's eighth highest priced quarterback on this slate. And I think people are just going to look over him a little bit and not really look to attack him. It's Baker. He doesn't really stand out to a lot of people. But, over the last month, he's been on a fucking hot streak. And I don't think it's going to end this week against the Jets defense. And then the other one is Mitchell Trubisky. I think he is, going against Jacksonville. I really like what he's been able to do. Since really being installed back as the starting quarterback, they never should have benched him in the first place, or they'd probably be in the playoffs right now. Had it not been for that, they pretty much need the Cardinals to lose for them to have a shot at that playoff spot. They're only a game back, but we could see the Bears in the playoffs. We'll have to see how that turns out. But they get this matchup against Jacksonville. They're 31st in pass DVOA, 24th in rush DVOA. The only concern here is going to be, do they just run the football like they did last week against the Vikings, where David Montgomery had 28 touches or something like that, carries in that game. That's something they could easily do again this week. But this is a fantastic matchup for Mitchell Trubisky and this offense here. And so those are the three quarterbacks that I'm going to have the most exposure to: Hurts, Mayfield, and Trubisky.
Yeah, Like those, Kev, because yeah, I mean Mitchell. It feels weird, but when we're talking about the slate that has presented itself to it, playing Mitchell, and how to stack him, and that can get you up to some of these high price guys. You guys got anything else at the quarterback position before we move on to running back? I think Herbert's kind of interesting, but
he is. I also will say this for the same narrative. I like Mahomes. Cam Akers is out this week for the Rams. So I think Goff against Seattle is very interesting. They're a pass funnel there. So
yes.
I just wanted to mention him.
No, let's talk about that, because that I think that kind of is a nice segue over to the running back position, because Cam Akers is out, as you said, Maddie. So we're going to have this split running back share, kind of like what we saw at the beginning of the year, right, with Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown. It seems like McVay said that they're both going to be heavily involved, but 4,500 for Darrell Henderson, I think he makes kind of an intriguing play in tournaments when you look at the red zone role that he had, headed into week 9. That I think that was their bye there, and then after that, week 10 was kind of the Cam Akers kind of takeover season, and from week 10 on, Cam Akers had 25 of the red zone carries there, really outplaying both of them, both Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson. But before that, it was really Darrell Henderson that was getting the red zone work there as the back there. I think he had 33 attempts in those first 9 weeks. So we're getting a red zone guy here. We know that the Rams, I agree with you, Maddie. Like, I think the way you beat Seattle is through the pass, but we've seen Jared Goff, kind of let down before. And I think that McVay wants to make things as easy as possible on Goff. And so to try and get this run game going in some way, shape, or form, I think will be definitely in play for them. And then you think about when they get into the red zone, just trying to limit the mistakes and just handing it to Henderson, who's proven that way. Now, he doesn't really catch passes, so that makes it tough. I mean, he has had some games with 3 or 4 targets there. So you're hoping for that. But at 4,500, I mean, what do you kind of have to lose in this kind of, slate when we're talking about getting to guys that, high price wide receivers or high price quarterbacks, or even if you wanted to play like a Kelsey or something like that, it's not like home run value. But I think that, when you're trying to find value, I think you could do worse than a guy like Henderson. But I think for me, kind of at the top, I mean, I think Nick Chubb will definitely be popular, especially with Williams out. And I do like Chubb, but it makes it tough because the Jets kind of defense, like the best thing they do is kind of stop the run. And I know that Cleveland is not going to go away from that, but they have been pass heavy a little bit here over the past 4 weeks. Baker Mayfield has kind of gotten it together. So they definitely don't need to run so much as if they have the pass going and it's working for them. I can see them doing that. But it starts off for me with Miles Sanders at $7K. I mean, if I can't get to Jalen Hurts, I love getting to Miles Sanders. Just look at last week with the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, Raheem Mostert leaves the game, but he was off to a pretty solid start running against them. And then you had the likes of Wilson coming in, beating them on the ground. They've just been attacked on the ground all year. And Miles Sanders, I mean, finally, we're getting Miles Sanders, kind of unleashed here with 31 touches of rushing attempts in the past 2 games going against the likes of Arizona and New Orleans, 100 yards against New Orleans. And I've said about this in my article, too, like this guy, kind of beat New Orleans when nobody else was beating them, and did it against the Steelers first when we weren't targeting them at all against the run. He had that, whatever it was, a huge yard run, 70 or 80 yards against them. And so we know that he has the upside to kind of, be a top tier back. And he's kind of, priced under guys like Taylor, Eckler, Montgomery, Chubb, who are all fine plays. But I think if you're, definitely looking for some leverage there to get to some Sanders where you don't have Hurts, I think kind of makes a ton of sense. And then going down just a little bit here, the guy I'm also interested in is McKissick. Alex Smith is questionable. And so, with the Haskins strip club kind of incident going on there, like, I'm not sure how they feel about that. If they want to, sit this guy, if Smith can go, I think if Smith can go, then that puts things really into play for a guy like McKissick, who is 6,400. That's going to be hard for people to pay for him. But when we're looking at no Terry McLaurin, he's doubtful for this game, probably going to miss. Like, it's going to be him, and it's going to be Logan Thomas and, maybe Cam Sims. But if you don't want to have to trust Cam Sims, like Alex Smith, running back, tight ends, like this guy loves to target them. And I know the big game from Logan Thomas came from Haskins last week, but I do like McKissick there if Alex Smith is starting. Scrolling down, yeah, I agree, Maddie. I mean, Bell, I think, if you're playing cash game, sure, why not? He'll be popular. Take a chance on him, but it does kind of make you worry just how that game goes and how the team likes to attack. Like, you could be frustrated that he's not getting the touchdowns. Like, he could get them down there. Maybe they're throwing to Kelsey in the end zone, or Hill breaks off a long one. I just don't know if it's going to be that home run play that people are alluding to. So we go down a little bit, and 4,800 for Geo Bernard against Houston. I mean, why are we not playing this guy? Ryan Finley, this guy's not. They don't want to pass with him, I don't think. I mean, I've only seen a full game of him, and that was last week against the Steelers. But now you're going against Houston. I mean, what better way to get Giovanni Bernard to keep going than facing this Houston Texans defense that we've attacked on the run all season? I mean, they're just absolutely atrocious. He saw 25 attempts against the Pittsburgh Steelers team that was also, banged up, but still, it's still the Steelers there. And if he's going to be involved in the run game, so to speak, so much, only one target last week. I'm not really looking at that. We know what his upside is in the pass catching game, and he's only 4,800 this week. Like, it's just too cheap. This Texans team has kind of kept people in the game. The Texans defense, that is, has kind of kept offenses in the game. So even though it is Cincinnati, it is on the road, I still like getting to some Geo Bernard this week. So that's kind of where I'm at with my three guys at the running back position, kind of one in each tier that I'll allude to there. Maddie or Kev, I'll start with you here for running backs. How are you feeling this week for your guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think this slate is interesting because we don't have any of those big, 9K or even 8K running backs to deal with. We're pretty much stuck in the 7K range, and between David Montgomery, Austin Eckler, Jonathan, well, not necessarily, Miles Sanders, I think these three guys are going to be the guys that everybody's going to want to play up top, or the four guys, I should say, up top. And for me, I like Nick Chubb quite a bit. But I think Austin Eckler is just another great matchup going against Denver. This defense is not the same Denver defense that we're come to expect. The amount of targets that this man gets, Keenan Allen is banged up in this matchup as well, so he very well could be limited again. So I mean, you could be looking at 10 to 15 targets for Austin Eckler in this matchup. I think some of these other guys have some question marks. Obviously, I love Miles Sanders as well, but at that 7K price tag. But Austin Eckler at 7,600 is where I'm probably going to start. And then, going down a little bit further, I was hoping that we were going to get to play Tony Pollard, but of course, Mike McCarthy's a fucking moron, and we're going to run the ghost of Ezekiel Elliott out here and
okay,
put him out here against Philly. Whatever, Tony Pollard just looked like the best running back they've had all year. Of course, it was one game. I get all that, but still, like, it's just frustrating to see that they're even going to, put Ezekiel Elliott back out here, over Tony Pollard. So we'll have to wait and see. Ezekiel Elliott's listed as questionable, but of course, Zeke is all in his feelings this week. Seeing all the stuff that people are saying about Tony Pollard and how he looks washed, and he was commenting on a lot this week. So love to see that. But in the 6K range, I think J.D. McKissick, without if Antonio Gibson doesn't play, they don't have Terry McLaurin, they're likely going to have to throw the ball. So, I think J.D. McKissick, we saw it last week. The dude just gets hammered with targets no matter who the quarterback is. And so $6,400 is a kind of a high price to pay for J.D. McKissick. Normally he's been in that low 5K range, for hyper 4K, and now paying $6,400 for him. But all the running backs that are available here in this tier, I think that he has some of the best upside. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins at 6,200 is also interesting as well. But I do think J.D. McKissick at 6,400, because of how much he's utilized as a pass catcher in this backfield, and he was utilized more as a runner than we typically see last week. So I do like that. And then in the 5K range, I think Melvin Gordon makes a whole hell of a lot of sense at 5,600. Philip Lindsay was ruled out. And so now with him out of the way, I think Melvin Gordon against the Chargers, who are a defense you certainly can run the football against, I don't hate that matchup for him at 5,600. last week, he's coming off a pretty solid performance. He's really been decent the last 3 weeks that they finally played him. His price tag hasn't really risen. And last week, he scored 24.1 fantasy point or PPR points, DK points. We're starting to see a little bit of it more uptick and being more involved as a pass catcher as well. He's had 7 targets the last 2 weeks as well with Melvin Gordon. So I don't mind Melvin Gordon at 5,600 either, as if you're wanting to pay up for one running back and then pay down for another. I think Melvin Gordon against the Chargers is certainly a direction you can go.
Maddie, talk to us. How you feeling about running back this week?
Yeah, so I think based on the landscape of the stacks that I want to attack, which are all seem to be priced up 7K or higher, I'm going to need to find some cheaper running backs to pair with those guys. So I was looking at Melvin Gordon as well. Ryan, I know you love revenge game narratives. It's his matchup against the Chargers here, who they've been attackable on the ground all year. And the big news is that Phillip Lindsay is ruled out. So that's massive. I mean, Lindsay was getting over 10 carries a game. So that's pretty significant. And then there's another guy too, which I don't think either of you guys touched on unless I missed it, was David Johnson, with Duke Johnson being ruled out against that Cincinnati rush defense, who is god-awful. If you're not playing Deshaun Watson, David Johnson finally saw 11 targets last week because, Duke Johnson was not there to do that. So Duke Johnson had been seeing like 4 to 6 targets a game. So you now take David Johnson's 5 targets a game and add on the extra 4 to 5 targets. And you're looking at probably an 8 to 10 target game for David Johnson, just because, they don't have Will Fuller. They've got a lack of options there, similar to, Austin Eckler. So if I'm paying up, I think you're going to have to choose between Chubb, Eckler, Miles Sanders, and Montgomery. I don't think the makeup for this week makes sense to play multiple of these guys just because of how expensive the stacks are and how priced up everything really is. So I think you're going to have to pick and choose. And I do think Eckler is my favorite. You look at what the Broncos have allowed on the ground this year. Let's see, where's my Broncos stats? Here they are. So, they've allowed over 3 games of over 200 rush yards, and a couple of those have come in the last 5 weeks. So just last week, they allowed over 180 to the Bills, which the Bills are not even a run-first team. So I really do like Eckler, and even if they don't really get him going on the ground, which they will be able to, but he's always involved in the pass game as well. He's going to be very, very heavily utilized on a weekly basis, especially if Keenan Allen remains banged up. My pay up this week is probably Eckler. I do like Sanders on non-Hurts teams. I just think those two guys probably eat into each other in terms of ceiling. So I probably wouldn't pair them together, but Dallas is really, really bad against the run. So I do like those guys there. And I will say, to touch on the Rams running back situation, you go back and look at the first time the Rams played the Seahawks. Goff, they had Akers, Henderson, and Malcolm Brown all active. Goff threw 37 times, and they only ran the ball 23 times in a game that they won 23-16. So that was their game plan, was to attack Seattle through the air. And now, let's say Seattle gets up early. Goff is going to have to throw, even more. So I'm off Henderson, who's probably going to be popular because people do want running back value. I'd rather pay $300 more for Geo Bernard, but I do like Melvin Gordon for a little bit more than that, and then David Johnson for just a little bit more than Gordon. So that's probably going to be my core group of guys.
No, that's fair, Maddie. Anytime you're talking about a guy like Darrell Henderson, even with the split there with Malcolm Brown, it even just makes it gross to even think about playing these two guys in general. But we do know that if they do get into the red zone, they will kind of lean on the run there, which is just makes the Rams so frustrating just in general, right? Because you're looking at the price tags, and we'll talk about it at wide receiver, but Cooper Kupp at 6,600, Robert Woods at 7K, I'd rather play other guys in the ranges that they're in, because what is their ceiling really? When we're talking about
you can fade that game completely, right? And just hope that the Rams defense continues to show up. They've been arguably the best pass defense in the NFL this year. And Seattle has kind of looked like dog shit the last month and a half.
Right.
So, you just play for the under in that game and fade it completely. And if Goff throws 2 touchdowns and they kick 2 or 3 field goals and score 23 points again, I mean, like playing those guys at 7K, they've got to hit their ceilings for over 100 yards and 1 or 2 touchdowns. So, I'm good with fading that game.
I think that's kind of where I align too. I mean, it's been so tough to trust the Seattle games to go over the past couple of weeks. Like they're just doing enough to win these games, and sometimes not even they're having some scares on the other side. But even the blowout against the Jets, I mean, like they kind of just took the foot off of the gas and were just like, all right, let's just get out of here. And this is a divisional game. A lot of emotions will fly definitely when these two teams, meet up against each other always. And so first matchup was like 23-16 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like this game is definitely kind of gross from a DFS perspective, but you guys have anything else at running back? I mean, David Montgomery, he comes in at 7,700. I mean, this guy just having career game after career game. I love to see it, being here in Chicago and the amount of draft equity that they invested into this guy. You like to see it kind of come to fruition here. Definitely has a good rapport with Mitch. Seems like Nagy, definitely taking the training wheels off and letting this guy kind of be involved in all aspects of the game, really taking on that pass catching role there as well, too. So going against a Jacksonville team, I mean, this is a team that we've tried to attack on the run by, all means. And, by no means will I have none of David Montgomery. He is close to 8K, so I'm just trying to figure out ways to build around stacks that I feel comfortable, where I don't have him on teams, but I do like having exposure to him in some ways. But, there's a wide receiver there that is in a revenge game narrative that I won't be able to get away from.
Yeah, that's a good segue. I mean, A-Rob has to be at the top of your list this week at wide receiver, right?
Yeah, I mean, even with this questionable tag that DK kind of has him at, like, whatever. This guy, just the market share of targets that he sees in this offense. I mean, Mitchell looks to him first and foremost, and this is his guy. And, I think that even with Nagy being there, and Mitchell too, I think that they do try and find ways to kind of get him involved. It's his first game back visiting Jacksonville. Since he's been a Chicago Bear, and they are playing for something here. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. They need to win this game. They know that their best way to do that is to get their best players the ball. And so we're looking at an Allen Robinson here who comes in at 7,700. But, despite that game last week, which was kind of weird there, him only seeing 5 targets against Minnesota. But, before that, 13-7, 13-9, 9-7. Just, a massive target share there. And this Jacksonville secondary is absolutely atrocious. Their top 3 main guys are out. Their 2 best corners and that are rookies, mind you, CJ Henderson and Sidney Jones, like they will be out for this game, I believe. So the backups that he's going to be going against, like Clay Brooks and the rest of these scrubs, it's just going to be Mom's going to cook it up. I mean, Mitchell T, this could be one of the best games that he has. So we could be talking about that on the back end. But yeah, love Allen Robinson this week. I mean, we were talking about the guys who he's priced around there, like 7K and above, like Robert Woods, Keenan Allen, if he plays going against Denver. I mean, sure, I like that, but he's 7,500. There too are going to be banged up. DK Metcalf going against Jalen Ramsey, Calvin Ridley going against KC, can't target really wide receivers with confidence against this KC defense. And then Tyreek Hill is all the way up at 9K. So I just think that, in that top tier range, I think that you're getting probably the most out of Allen Robinson there in that range. And then as we kind of scroll down, Deontay Johnson, for what it's worth, I mean, this guy is the offense. I mean, regardless of how they feel about him with the drops and leading the league with 13 or however many it is, like this dude will still be involved in the offense. And if this game is close, or if this game, goes to shootout range here, home game for Pittsburgh, got to right the track, or right the ship. And he's 6,300. The way that he is involved in this offense, it kind of feels too cheap to me, like a couple $100 too cheap. Like he should be a 7K wide receiver for what he means. I mean, Claypool has kind of been out of the mix Juju's there at 6K, and it's funny to me that they kind of priced them all together because Deontay Johnson is leaps and bounds, like the guy that Ben looks to in this offense, and really has the upside there to put up the 25 or 30 that you would be looking for a wide receiver in that range. So I definitely will have shares of Deontay Johnson. Love him. When we're talking about games, if I scroll down here, and this is going to be really all the way down here, but for my cheap guy at the wide receiver position, if I like Deshaun Watson, I'm playing this guy, Chad Hansen. I mean, he's seen 90% of the snaps or more in 2 of the past 3 games. In that third game, or it was bookmarked there with the middle game there, he saw 80% of the snaps before last week. But he's heavily involved in this offense. And I know it has come, what I like to see is that Brandon Cooks was back last week and this guy was still on the field. Like they've definitely found a role for this guy, to be involved, even with Kiki and Cooks being out there. And, only 3 targets last week against Indy, got the touchdown. But before that, those 2 games, he was seeing 7 targets. I think it's safe to assume that he's going to see anywhere from 4 to 6. And at 4,400, going against this Cincinnati team, if Houston does get pass heavy, if Cincinnati somehow is able to keep it close, like this guy's really interesting to me in Deshaun Watson stacks, because I think people will go with Cooks, they'll go with QT, and they'll kind of forget about Chad Hansen. But he does offer you some salary relief there to kind of play around with. So definitely like him. I mean, there's other guys in the mid-tier range. It's a very interesting week. Because the guys who are in the mid-tier range aren't that explosive. I mean, Amari Cooper at 5,700, I do like that, as I was talking about with Andy Dalton. I feel like he could definitely pay off that price tag there with how banged up the Philly secondary is. And so you're hoping that Andy Dalton can kind of get him involved. And a guy like, Russell Gage is interesting to me because Julio's out. But again, it's tough to trust wide receivers. But if that game were to stay close, if you were looking for a run back piece on Atlanta, that would be where I would go to. I think people will try and go to Ito Smith. We didn't talk about him, but Russell Gage has definitely been involved. But Sammy Watkins at 5K, I don't know if either of you guys were going to talk about him, but going against Atlanta there at 5K, I think he offers some merit there to get exposure to that KC team, that KC passing attack, and went for 6 for 60 against New Orleans. I mean, really has been back and hasn't found the end zone yet, but that's not to say that he's not capable of doing so. It just depends on, who's going to have the game outside of Hill and Kelsey. Those are the 2, alphas at the top, but especially without Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Maddie, if you say that they're going to lean a little bit more pass heavy than they would be in the past, I definitely like getting to some Sammy Watkins at 5K flat, just to talk myself into getting some exposure to that KC team if I'm not paying up for the top option. So that's kind of where my head's at right now at the wide receiver. Definitely a lot more digging that needs to go into. Maddie, what say you at wide receiver position?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up Sammy because I definitely, especially if you're playing Mahomes, you're going to need to pair him at 8,500 with a couple guys, because there's no way he reaches value at 8,500 without bringing 2 to 3 guys with him. So obviously Tyreek at the top, 9K. It's like we were paying 9K for Michael Thomas, who was just consistently getting 25 points a game last year because his volume was so safe. Well, Tyreek is getting over 10 targets a game over the second half of the season. So, and we know that Tyreek can go out and go for 200 yards and a couple of scores any given game. So I really think that 9K is going to scare people off. And it's very hard to pair Mahomes with Tyreek. But you can get creative and throw in a $3,100 Mecole Hardman, who saw 9 targets last week against the Saints. He's been somewhat involved since, the second half of the season. I mean, you go back to all the way to the Jets game where he had 9 targets, Carolina 4, then 1, 5, 3, 3, and 9. So I think what Andy Reid might do, and this is just a bit of a hunch, but when you're missing a running back, right, you've still got to get something that resembles running plays. And the Chiefs, we know they love to run those little pop passes with Tyreek and Hardman coming across the formation because those pretty much act like run plays, right? So your receivers aren't running as many routes. You give them a chance to catch a breath for a play, things like that. So a little high percentage play to pick up a few yards. So I think Hardman could be involved in that type of play scheme, little screen passes and pop passes behind the line of scrimmage. And that's an easy way to get a couple targets and a couple catches at 3,100, man. And we know he's got game-breaking speed. Mahomes has even targeted him deep a couple times. I remember one of the passes Mahomes threw deep to Hardman last week should have been a touchdown, but I think Hardman either dropped it or had it knocked away from him. So, Hardman, he does have 20-point upside. And even if he only gets you 7 points at 3,100 on this slate, I don't think it's going to kill you. So he is I think he's the key to unlocking the high-priced Chiefs stack. So I really do like Hardman. Another guy you talked about the mid-range is kind of gross and interesting this week. Amari Cooper at home at, what is he, 5,700 area. He's known to be a home road splits guy. We just saw him on Thanksgiving slate smash the Washington defense. He had 26 DraftKings points in that game. And now he gets a pass funnel Philly defense, which Andy Dalton has taken to targeting Amari Cooper as his main guy in that offense. So I think Cooper's got the 25 to 30 point ceiling this week in a game that, I think Dallas is going to have to throw the ball, especially if Zeke's out there. I don't think they're going to be as efficient running the ball as they would be with Pollard, as crazy as that is to say. But Philly's a pass funnel, and Jalen Hurts I think, going to put up a ton of points. So I really like Amari Cooper, especially as a run back in Jalen Hurts stacks there for that game. Outside of that, I mean, we mentioned Allen Robinson. He's such a good play against Jacksonville, especially if you're not playing David Montgomery for basically the same price. Revenge game, it's just really hard to get off Robinson there. And then Houston, we already talked about Deshaun. You already brought it up yourself. QT's got over double-digit points in the last 3 games. Without Will Fuller, I don't really know what Brandon Cook's ceiling is. So let me just play the cheaper guy who's a bit safer and can still score a touchdown, is going to see high volume. So I really like QT this week as well.
Yeah, QT's an excellent call there as well. The price tag is just too cheap on what his role in the offense is. Kevin, wide receiver, talk to us, man. How you looking with your teams and builds?
Yeah, I mean, not mentioning some of the guys you guys have already talked about. Like I said with Jarvis Landry, like he makes a 6,900. He is priced up a little bit further from where he's typically been. But if you look over the last the month of the season, he went from basically being a complete afterthought to really being pretty dominant. Over the last 4 weeks, he scored 28.3, 20.4, 11.7 against Baltimore, but then back to 19.1 last week. He's leading this team in targets. He scored a touchdown in 3 of his last 4 games as well. Really good matchup this week going against the Jets. So, $6,900 Jarvis Landry, I think, is a nice pivot off some of these other higher priced wide receivers. People not wanting to pay up for that price tag to get to Jarvis Landry. If you want to, do the full game stack here, Rashard Higgins also, I think, makes some sense at his price tag as well. He is, again, since really Odell's been down, but really since week 13, he's dropped 21, 18, and 11 over the last 3 weeks as well. So this is a good matchup as well for Rashard Higgins in this game. And so, like I said, if you're wanting to full game stack this Browns offense, I think those are the 2 spots you want to go to. And like I said, the top one is 6,900, and then Higgins is only 4,800 in this offense. So really pretty cheap game stack with Baker Mayfield at 6,100. I do have some interest in Tyler Lockett at 6,500. Nobody's going to want to play him. He has struggled recently. He really doesn't have much of a ceiling, or he hasn't really had much of a ceiling, I should say, over the last you have to go all the way back to kind of week 11 where he scored 21, and then week 7 where he just went nuclear for 56. But this is a pretty good matchup for him this week going against the Rams. Now, the Rams defense has been solid, but you could probably almost guarantee that Jalen Ramsey is going to exclusively shadow DK Metcalf in this game, which should open things up a little bit more for Tyler Lockett to get a little bit more targets. And Tyler Lockett is the type of guy who can, reach 30-plus fantasy points, if things break his way. So I don't mind Tyler Lockett at 6,500. Nobody's going to play him because he just hasn't done anything in quite some time. So I do like him. Deontay at 6,300. I know a lot of people were really worried about him last week. Obviously, he wasn't on the main slate, but he was a guy just in terms of, in general, the entire fantasy community. But you just cannot deny the target share that this man racks up every single week. I mean, the guy gets virtually double-digit targets every week. I mean, he could get you up to 15 or 16 targets at 6,300 is just way too cheap for a guy that has that kind of upside and can really go off. So I like Deontay quite a bit at 6,300. And then going down a little bit further, I like the Sammy Watkins call. I've been playing him really since he's been back every single week, just hoping for the Sammy Watkins game to come, and it has not come yet. But this very well could be the week at 5K. Like you mentioned, if you're going to play this offense, you're going to stack this offense anyways with the Chiefs. You're going to have to find cheaper options. I think Sammy Watkins could do that, and I also think McCole Hardman makes a little bit of sense. He got more involved in the offense last week. This is a matchup that they're probably going to have to throw the ball. The Chiefs have been much more of a team that they basically play matchups. They're not going to sit here and fuck around and try to run the ball 25 times, in this game to try to hashtag establish the run. If they feel like you have a weakness on one side of the football or the other, they're going to attack it. And this is one of them I think you can do that with. And if Tyreek is even limited, which is possible, because, if you're the Chiefs, you're not going to risk losing Tyreek Hill for an extended period of time. He's been dealing with a hamstring injury really for the last month. Or so it continues to crop up. He ends up missing a few plays, and then he's able to come back in. He's always on the trainer's bench, getting massages and stuff like that. They kind of called it cramps. And then last week, I know the kind of big thing on Twitter was him drinking a bottle. It looked like, one of those little mini shot bottles, but it was a bottle of pickle juice. Anyways, so I do think McCole Hardman is pretty interesting at his price tag. I mean, he is, sub 4K. And so I really do not mind. Yeah, it's 3,100 for McCole Hardman, who has 20-plus point upside here. I played him last week. I'm going to play him again to get a little bit different. And, down here in this really cheap 3K price tag range. And then the Washington football team, they have nobody to throw the ball to. I mean, it's Logan Thomas, right? And then I think Cam Sims is somewhat interesting at his price tag. He could end up seeing, 10 targets here in this game against Carolina. Carolina's pass defense isn't one that I'm all that concerned with either. It's just kind of gross because, really trusting any of these guys. But Cam Sims is only 3,300 down here in the super cheap range. And then, past that, there's some other guys like Sterling Shepard, I think, at 4,500 consistently sees a pretty decent target share. But I would be concerned a little bit with Marlon Humphrey, depending on what happens with the rest of their pass catchers here. But that's kind of where I'm at. Guys like Darnell Mooney, 4K also. I was on him last week, and I'll probably play him again this week against Jacksonville.
Quick question. With Finley being at quarterback for the Bengals, does that have you off the Bengals receivers completely? Because Tyler Boyd is out. So you've got T. Higgins at 4,700. Erickson's going to play slot. He's min price, basically. I'm just curious what you guys are doing with that situation, especially considering we love Deshaun. So, I mean, do you just run it back with Geo? Or, if the Bengals get behind, I mean, they've shown that they will not run Geo. I mean, he literally could get 8 carries if Houston takes a 10-point lead early. So, and in that scenario, you would want a wide receiver, right?
Right.
And that's why, but I can't play Geo this week. I think Geo is a trap because people are going to see what he just did against Pittsburgh, and I just don't they will be very quickly to pull the plug on Geo if they fall behind. And this is a much different scenario where Pittsburgh has been a team that their arrow has been trending down, at least offensively, for a while. They continue to struggle, and they made this offense look much better than what it is. I think this is a team that's definitely going to fall behind, and when that happens, I think Geo falls out and just doesn't get the volume. You'll look with Geo past last week. Before that, you had to go back to week 7 or 8 that he even had a viable game. And so I think T. Higgins, who saw quite a few targets from him last week at 4,700 against Houston, I do think that is a interesting spot to go to. I mean, Ryan Finley didn't blow the doors off anybody and wow me or anything like that, but it at least looked like maybe possibly a competent, maybe competent against one of the worst defenses in all of football. So, T. Higgins, I think would be an interesting spot to go to at 4,700.
Yeah, also Finley, showed that he did have some wheels, so to speak. I mean, for whatever those are. I mean, they might be Heelys, but they were at least wheels. So that could take away from Gio. I mean, the frustrating thing is that you look back, and I know what you're saying, Kev, is you go back through the logs there with Bernard, but that Dallas game, I mean, really, that I feel like that's unfair because he had the first fumble, and however many carries it was, and they fucking benched him, which is crazy. I mean, that was their best kind of opportunity to kind of take that game there. And we see that from last week as they get Geo involved and good things happen. So it does feel like the leash is short. And so I do think that is trapped because he's not just a home run play, but since he is 4,800, I do think that it does make some sense to get to him. But the guy for me on Cincinnati that I would be trying to get to with Boyd being out is AJ Green at 3,400. I mean, 7 targets in that Dallas game, only 3 last week, but we know that he has big playability. And if he's able to hit on one, at 3,400, I think that would definitely pay off. And he'll be out there with Boyd being out. So that's the guy that I would go to in this offense that I think makes it a little bit interesting there, as he should be on the field and probably like one of his last stints with the Bengals, right? Like he's going to be out of there. So this could be his final games. They could get him going. Before we move on to tight end, I kind of want to use this as a segue here. Like if you're playing Jalen Hurts, Kev, I know you talked about him as well too. Like who's the wide receiver that you guys would pair him with, if any? Because I know Greg Ward's been kind of involved here since Jalen Hurts has gotten the start. Rager had 8 targets last week. So you love to see that, but some of these other guys have still been involved too. So I'm just curious to see where your guys' head's at from the wide receiver perspective.
Tight end.
I think it would be Rager if that's where I'm going, because he would have had even more targets last week had he not gotten injured. He left late in the game, and I think he would have had even more targets. And that's when Greg Ward, I think, found the end zone. So I like Jalen Rager. Like he seems to be really looking for Jalen Rager here in this matchup against Dallas. So if I was going to pair with anybody, it would be Jalen Rager, at least for me.
It would be Dallas Goddard at $3,600.
That's why I wanted to bring it up as we get into tight end, because tight end will definitely be interesting this week. With Kelsey's 8.5. I mean that. Okay, I don't know how you play him like outside of KC stacks, but
I can on this slate. I mean, there's so many cheap tight ends that have the ability to score a touchdown here.
Right. So I mean, play him if you want to. I'm not gonna spend time talking people off of that because it's Travis Kelce, but 8.5 is a sure hell of a lot to pay at this tight end position. Mark Andrews, the second prize with 5,700 there going against New York. I mean, he just hasn't done enough, I feel like, to pay off of what you would be. He's still going to garner ownership because people will just look at he's the second highest price, but he's so much of a discount between him and Kelsey that I think that people will still play him and get exposure to Lamar and things of that nature. And maybe that's a pivot off of Logan Thomas, who comes in at 4,900, who's going to be the chalk at tight end, I feel like, this week, having seen 15 targets last week with Dwayne Haskins. And I think people will talk themselves into loving him more if it's Alex Smith at quarterback, because Alex Smith was targeting him a ton as well too. So he definitely will be the chalk. I do like him because there is no McLaurin. I mean, that we just have to call it what it is, but he will be popular. So I definitely will be looking for pivots. And one of those was Dallas Goddard coming in at 3,600. I mean, has been pretty much the leading guy in the pass catching offense for Jalen Hurts. I mean, guys like Zach Ertz are still seeing targets, but not the same share as Goddard. Jalen Rager, he wasn't seeing really that many targets until that last week there. Really popped off in that game. And then Greg Ward has pretty much been consistent as well too. But Dallas Goddard, I mean, how many times have we talked about this with this guy? Like, you're looking at his target shares of 8, 6, 7, 10 over the past 4 games, 6 and 6 before that, before week 9. And then, not really hitting the 100 yards and only 2 touchdowns over that span, but just, he just has the ability to just pay off, I feel like, one of these times. And we got him going against this Dallas team here. where I think you'll definitely find ways to, take advantage of this secondary. And at 3,600, you're looking for that touchdown, as Maddie's saying, and you'll be fine. Another guy here talk about touchdown is Austin Hooper. The Jets have just been absolutely obliterated by the tight end position all year. And we get Austin Hooper in here, who is coming off of a 6-target game there against the Giants, got that touchdown, just coming right back into the fold and being in the mix here for Baker and co. And so the way if you are playing Baker, I think stacking it with Hooper definitely makes sense. And even as a one-off there, I think there's pretty high likelihood that he can end up scoring a touchdown. So definitely like getting to him. Definitely will have some Jordan Akins just because of my Deshaun Watson interest in pairing him with a guy like that. I definitely love getting exposure to him as well. And then I'll probably be going back to the well if it makes sense to a guy like Cole Kmet. I mean, kind of let people down last week with the 2 targets, but before that, 7-7 going against this Jacksonville team. Pairing him with Mitchell Trubisky to be a run back there with Allen Robinson as well too. I think kind of makes some sense at 3K. Seeing it, just Jimmy Graham has just not been as involved as he was before. So you definitely want to see that. I know last game he did have those 3 targets there, which was frustrating as well too. But they've definitely looked to get Cole involved early on in drives. And so just with what he's seeing as far as snap shares go, I like getting to some Cole Kmet this week. Kev, what say you at tight end?
Yeah, if I'm not running a stack with Kelsey, it becomes pretty simple for me. I like Noah Fant quite a bit. Popped back last week with 11 targets. He's somebody that has been dealing with a lot of injuries, or looks like maybe he's possibly getting a little bit more healthy. Going against the Chargers, the Chargers are one of only 4 teams that have allowed at least 10 touchdowns to the position this year, and the Chargers are in that group. And so I like Noah Fant quite a bit at 4,800. I think he has great leverage off of Logan Thomas, who is going to be very chalky, and especially now with Terry McLaurin being rolled out. And coming off a game with just that massive target share that he saw last week. So I like Noah Fant a lot there. And then, I totally agree on Dallas Goddard. But Austin Hooper coming off of one of his better games we've seen this year, 6 targets last week. You want to target the Jets with tight ends. The Jets have allowed the most fantasy points to the position, and by almost a 2-point margin per game in terms of DK points per game to the next closest, which is Chicago, allowing fantasy points to the position. So I do like Austin Hooper. He's only 3,500, and past that, I think there's some interesting names. Cole Kmet, you already mentioned. Dalton Schultz at 3,200. I think you could look there, but for me, that's kind of where I'm gonna be living is Noah Fant at 4,800, and then Austin Hooper, and then if I could fit something in a game stack, like whether it's Travis Kelce or something like Austin Hooper or Dallas Goddard in my game stack with Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield.
Maddie, Goddard for you and log out, or you got other guys that you like?
No, I actually think that this is a great week for cheap tight ends, and is the reason why I don't really know that I'm going to get to Kelce. Like if I'm paying up for a Chief, it's probably going to be Tyreek, and I don't see myself playing both Tyreek and Kelce. So first off, Hunter Henry's out. I don't know if I'm going to play Parham. Well, Henry's on the COVID list. They say he's questionable, pending whether he can come off that by Sunday. So Parham's interesting. He was one of the better XFL players in the 5 games that he played there. I think he had over 300 yards and multiple, 4 touchdowns in 5 games. So he's interesting. He's already caught a couple touchdowns from Herbert playing in a secondary role on the offense, but Chargers are pretty banged up, and Denver defense is not very good. So I think he's interesting at mid price. You guys already talked about Goddard. I do like Goddard. In the 2 games that Philly's played with Hurts as the starter, Goddard leads the team in targets with 14. Rager's second with 12. And then tied for third is actually Zach Ertz and Greg Ward at 10. So I even think Zach Ertz is interesting at 3,100. Him and Goddard combined for 15 targets last week. So Goddard had 8, Ertz had 7. So I think Ertz is interesting, especially if all of the ownership flows to Goddard. Then I think, I can see a world where everybody plays Goddard and they're tilted by the double touchdown Ertz game. So I think Ertz is interesting. I love the Akins call if you're playing Deshaun. I love the idea of anchoring my tight end to my quarterback. That makes a ton of sense there. And Komet's the other guy too. I think he's very interesting playing all the snaps for Chicago, especially if I'm not playing David Montgomery. You can run a Mitch, A-Rob, Komet stack and run it back with like a Keelan Cole or something like that. So I think that game's interesting. And yeah, tight end is wild this week. I think there's a lot of viable cheap options that could score 1 or 2 touchdowns. So.
I think the Parham call is actually interesting too. I do like that call, and it sounds like that Hunter Henry's not going to play. They said he is unlikely to come off the list by Wednesday, so I saw that. So, who knows? I mean, maybe we should be looking more at the Tyus Johnsons and the Jalen Guytons of the world, because I mean they really could have nobody outside of Austin Eckler, because Keenan Allen is also questionable to play. So they don't have those guys like. We could be seeing a ton of targets flowing to those other wide receivers, which we've already seen. Like Tyus Johnson had a really good game last week. Was solid anyway. And
last 2 games.
And then, Jalen Guyton, saw a pretty decent target share as well. So,
yeah, I mean, you can stack Herbert up for pretty cheap with all these injuries. So I don't even hate that. And if Chargers score 30+ points, you've got a mega stack for like no salary. So.
Yeah, I mean, you got like Guyton, it was 3,200, and then you have Parham, who's 2,500.
And you can even pair Eckler with Herbert because of Eckler's pass role, his role in the passing game. Like he could catch a receiving touchdown, and you've got the double stack there, and you just get all the Chargers points.
Yeah, and then Tyron Johnson is 4K. So
and then you just run it back with Melvin Gordon on the other side, who we already talked about.
Yeah,
who's also cheap. So yeah, that's a good way to get a really cheap game stack that 2 defenses that haven't really been playing defense.
Right. No, that would be interesting. And even if Keenan Allen does suit up, I mean, like he suited up last week and just wasn't doing much out there. And, those soft tissue injuries are just a bitch. And so he's the one that wanted to be out there, but even the team was limiting him. So we can't really fully expect him to be out there in his full allotment of work, even if he's ruled in, with it have lingering for so long. Let's talk about defense as we get ready to close this out and do our build and briefly touch on the Saturday slate here for everybody before we log off. Guys, it's the DGen Nation pod. You're listening to the Week 16 DraftKings NFL DFS breakdown with us. Appreciate you guys rocking with us. If you're just now tuning in, or if you've just, kind of scrolled through, you're listening for the first time, just make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Tomorrow will be that giveaway there for the Allen Robinson jersey. For anybody who is subscribed is how you are eligible. So you guys definitely want to make sure you are subscribed to win that. All right, let's get into defense, guys. We got Ravens at the top, Browns, Bears, Steelers, Chiefs, Chargers, Colts, Rams, and Washington to round out the 3K range. Just kind of hit on what you guys like. I mean, if I'm paying up, I think I do like the Bears at 3,600. I would probably go to the Ravens for just $400 more going against the Giants. I mean, the Ravens defenses, they've really, been coming to life and making life miserable for quarterbacks over the past couple of weeks. I mean, Jacksonville, they had that 5-sack game. And kind of, Cleveland, but Cleveland's offense has been hitting on all cylinders. So you don't really want to look at that. But just what they've done against quarterbacks, I think, it's 4K, but it makes sense if you're going to look at the Bears at 3,600. Washington football team for me at 3,000 is where I would come into there. I mean, I don't know what's going on with this Carolina offense, but I don't want to say broken, but they just don't look as great as they have been, and just struggling to kind of move the football here with the guys that they have. And so we're looking at a Washington football team here who they've had some big games, against San Fran and Dallas and the Cincinnati Bengals as well, going into that home matchup there for them. I'm intrigued by them. And then as we get down to the bottom here, there's not much that I like. it seems kind of ugly, but I do have some interest yet again in the Broncos, as weird as it sounds. I mean, the secondary has been bad with the guys that they have banged up, but the offense for them is really what kind of hurts, because when you're looking at that Buffalo game, like, yeah, they were able to get to, Drew Lock and make some things happen, but it was because the Broncos just kept, giving up short fields to this team and kind of putting pressure on, Lock to have to throw, and that allowed for more opportunities to the Bills to kind of pop off. And if the Chargers are kind of banged up to a tune of a certain extent, like I could see them, luck boxing into something here. Again, it's a rookie quarterback too. Like, Herbert is not mistake proof. It does feel ugly, but that's kind of the one that I would like a little bit more. I guess there would be some interest for me in the Eagles team, but I do like a shootout in that game. So that's kind of what has not led me on them. I'll just get to Washington for $100 more. Rams at 3,100 too is interesting. As I played them the last time that they played the Seahawks, but they were 2,200 that time. But Rams are always in play, I feel like, for their units. So, Maddie, how are you feeling about with defense this week?
I think it's pretty straightforward for me. There's really only 3 or 4 that I'm looking at. Big Ben has looked awful over the last month and a half, so I have interest in the Colts defense, despite that being on the road. I like the Washington call against Carolina. Washington defense has been what's kept them in games all year. I think the Eagles are, they'll get pressure on Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton can make some mistakes. If you're not stacking that game up, I think the Eagles make sense in different builds. And then I think the Seahawks at 2,600 are interesting. Shockingly, they have forced 13 interceptions and have 40 sacks on the year, and they've actually been playing well over the last month and a half. And they just held this Rams team to 23 points just a month and a half ago. So in a game where we said Goff might be forced to throw the ball more and the Rams want to throw it, I mean, good things happen when you play defense and the offense is throwing a lot of passes. So 2,600 for a Seahawks team is very interesting. And then if you are truly team punt defense, I'm okay with the Falcons at 1,900. Usually the min is 2K, but even when they gave up 40-something points to Dallas back in like week 2, they still scored positive points. So I'm good with it if you like the rest of your build, but I would definitely try to get to the others first.
Kev, how you feeling?
I think it's pretty simple. I like the Eagles quite a bit. They are, I think, second in adjusted sack rate on the season. Sub 3K. I like the Texans at 2,800. I think that is too cheap. The Texans are in top 10 in adjusted sack rate, and so I don't mind them at 2,800 going against Cincinnati. And then really past that, if I could figure out a way to get up to like Kansas City at 3,400, I could see myself doing that. Or even I don't think Bears against Jacksonville is all that egregious at 3,600. It just really depends on where my build takes me, how much money I have left. But once I get to that point, but for me, I think I would much prefer to, obviously to pay down, and that where I'm going to start would be Eagles and Texans. Nice.
I like it. Yeah, guys, that's week 16. That's week 16 in a nutshell. I mean, it's really it makes for an interesting tournament week. I feel like because of the not lock button plays, so to speak, that we've been accustomed to kind of get in, or at least knowing where the chalk was going to formulate, and that being, do you want to miss out on if they pop off with having Derrick Henry, on the slate, or a guy like Dalvin Cook or anything like that. So definitely a fun week to kind of play around with. If you guys are multi-entering, definitely have fun with that. All right, week 16, we got our DK build in the huddle, $5 entry. Maddie, let us know how the team's starting off this week.
I think we're all in agreement. Let's just go Jalen Hurts. Let's start off the team that way.
Fair enough. I like it. Jalen Hurts is in at quarterback. Kev, you got next. How you feeling?
Give me Austin Eckler at 7,600.
Okay, like that. Want the stack here. I'm going to go Dallas Goddard at tight end. Just lock him in at 3,600. See what we can do with this build. 5,300 left per position. That's a pretty nice price tag for you, Maddie.
Run it back with Amari.
Love that. Amari's 57, so we're still playing with 52-20 per position there. Running back, wide receiver ×2, flex and defense left.
Give me Rager.
All right, got the double stack going there. Rager's 46, ups it back up to just over 53 per position. Let's get A-Rob in there. See what we can do with this team. Wide receivers are Cooper, Rager, A-Rob, Jalen Hurts, Dallas Goddard with the stack there as well, and then Austin Eckler at running back. Need running back, flex, and defense.
Let's get weird. Let's get our Chiefs exposure. Throw in Hardman.
All right, so we throw in Hardman there. Now we have, I'll put Rager or Cooper, one of the two, in the flex with them playing in the later game. Let's throw Rager in there. Running back and defense left with 53-50 left. This is interesting. Kev, talk. It's on you. I'll let you literally running back.
You can literally play whatever running back you want.
Well, how would you guys feel about instead of going Rager if we went Miles Sanders? Or do you think that too negatively correlates to each other because of what we're doing here?
I mean, if Philly scores 35 points, which they could, then your team has all the points. So, like, what was it, 2 weeks ago when Chicago played Houston? The winning team was like Mitch, Montgomery, and Allen Robinson because Chicago scored, 40 points? And those guys were – I mean, it's a concentrated offense. So, yeah, I'm good with it.
Because I feel like it opens up more if we do that versus playing Rager, I think.
I'm good with that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind it. I've talked about that, playing both of them and just hoping that, that you get all the touchdowns there. Hasn't come to fruition yet. Doesn't mean it can't happen, though, against Dallas. I like this game as a shootout, sneaky shootout, by the way.
Yeah, so, Kev, your pick still, I think, because we now have flex and defense, 41-50 left.
How weird do I want to get?
I have the Eagles in right now as a placeholder for D at 2,900.
That leaves you 54 in the flex. That's QT. Or
100 more for Washington football team. You go. I mean, I wouldn't even hate having Rams exposure to the defense. I mean, that game could be weird. It is in Seattle, but
yeah, I mean, you could go Melvin Gordon and a 2,700 defense, QT and 2,900.
This isn't like if Melvin Gordon can't do it in this spot with the if I'm done with him.
Le'Veon Bell and 2,500.
Let's do that. Let's move Hardman up, then we'll play Melvin in the flex, and that'll leave $2,700 left over.
Okay. Melvin, and then we'll go. You know what? Let's stick on that same game as I was alluding to. Let's go Seahawks at 3,600 or 2,600. I mean,
yeah, I like that. I'm good with the Seahawks.
If we're not having exposure to that game, getting one of those defenses, I think makes sense. Low scoring.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if all of us really like the under, I mean,
Yeah.
Seattle surprisingly has 40 sacks this year, which the Eagles have 44. So, I mean, and we constantly say the Eagles, they're a team that can get pressure on the quarterback. So Seattle quietly has been getting pressure on the quarterback.
Right. So the team we got is Hurts, Eckler, Sanders, Amari Cooper, McCall Hardman, Allen Robinson, Dallas Goddard, Melvin Gordon in the flex, Seahawks D, 100 in salary left over. Go ahead and submit that, and that will do it there for the Week 16 DraftKings NFL DFS breakdown here from the DJ Nation pod. Guys, real quick before we go, we do have football going on today, Saturday slate. Just briefly, talk to me where your guys' head's at. We got 3 games going on today. Tampa Bay and Detroit is kicking off in about 45 minutes, just under 45 minutes. San Fran visiting Arizona, and then Miami and Raiders are the late slate tonight at 7:00. So definitely a fun slate here from a DFS perspective. We talked about it offline that the salaries are really not, you can play anybody on this slate. So it really just comes down to what game stack do you love? What game do you like to really hit? And then, pairing the best options from the other games if you feel like it's necessary. Maddie, I'll start with you just real quick. Just where's your head at for this slate?
Yeah, I'm just going to fade the air attacks from that last game, Las Vegas and Miami. I'm just going to play the ground game there. Jacobs and Gaskin. Gaskin's back from the COVID list. That's 2 really good rushing matchups there. I think that game could be a bit slow and low scoring, especially if Carr is any sort of limited with that groin injury or if Mariota plays. But, so I'm loading up the air attacks from the first 2 games. Give me all of the Bucks and Lions passing attacks. Both Stafford and Brady are great plays. If you're not playing Brady, I think you have to play Fournette against Detroit, and then Kyler Murray stack up that Arizona side and run it back with Kittle and Ayuk, and that's just how I'm going to approach the slate there.
Yeah. I mean, Kittle being on the slate. I mean, God bless. Merry Christmas to everybody who's playing on this Saturday slate.
Yeah, he's 5K and he's been 7K this year before he got hurt. So pretty big discount.
My God. Yeah. When you're talking about, not having to think of Waller being at 7K, you got the CJ Beathard connection there from their Iowa days. You definitely love that. So, I love getting to some Kittle on this slate. Kev, what say you, man? How are you feeling?
I feel pretty similar to what Matty just said, but I will say I think CJ Beathard is an interesting play at 5K. He has the ability to pick up yards on the ground. He's probably going to go completely unowned. And, whether you want to run him with Kittle and Ayuk, I think that those are 2 directions you could go to get a little bit different on this slate, because I think most people are going to pretty much stick to at least the quarterback. I think Murray and Brady are going to carry the far most ownership here. And so to get a little bit different, I have, I am going to play a little bit of Stafford. I'm not really worried about him. The injury. I don't think the reason he sat had anything to do at the end of last game. I think it had to do because they were getting blown out against Tennessee. So this is at home. So I like Stafford. And then I think that, like I said, CJ Beathard, I think if you want to get different, I think is a place you could go because of his ability to pick up yards on the ground. And he's been a viable fantasy option, fantasy quarterback whenever given opportunities in the past. So 5K, you can kind of open things up and kind of do whatever you want from there, whether you want to run it back with DeAndre Hopkins or Christian Kirk or whatever have you from there. So, but yeah, I think the chalk is going to really come from this Tampa Bay Detroit game, trying to figure out ways to get a little bit different. I think is going to be key on this 3-game slate, because I'm not overly excited about the Miami and the Raiders game tonight. So these first 2 games are where it's all at, and the second game, I think I'll probably try to have some pieces from it, but it's not going to be a ton.
Yeah, I think just real quick, Ryan, before you wrap us up with your thoughts, but I think a good way to get different with Tampa Bay and Detroit is to just mega stack it and just hope that that's the one game that just blows the doors off the other 2. And just because I think people maybe run like 3 or 4 guys, but if you're running like 6 guys from that game, like maybe run 4 Bucks and 2 Lions, and that game goes nuclear, then you win, because I think the other 2 games could play slow and lower scoring. So while that game is popular, yeah, like you said, Kev, I think it's smart to force yourself to be a bit different.
And I guess I'm kind of on the other side. We all play tournaments, and so I like the perspective that that Miami Vegas game is late. And so with so many question marks being on it, like I feel like having multiple pieces in that game, but without taking the quarterback, so to speak. So like I do agree with you, Maddie, like I do love getting Gaskin and Jacobs like on the same rosters, but then having like maybe one, or if not one, but two pieces elsewhere from that game as well too. Because I do think that, I mean, there's nothing that says to me that if this game, Vegas is at home, but if Miami can kind of put up some points here, if Parker and what is his name, the tight end Gesicki and Grant are all active, like I do like what Tua could try and do to this Raiders defense there, and especially having Gaskin back, I think that's interesting. So if those guys are able to put up points, I do like that somebody else will kind of fall into that. And for me, it's just like with the Tampa Bay game, I think in Detroit, I'm just hoping to take, maybe 2 or 3 pieces from that game. Hope that I hit on the ones that you need to have, because I don't want to play Fournette. And it will be popular. So I'm just trying to find ways that kind of makes sense where I could be in a position later to kind of shoot up where nobody else kind of has pieces. So it is a fun slate. I mean, even with that San Fran and Arizona game, like Kev was talking about, I was looking at what you could do with Beathard too, because Ayuk is just in such a good spot. And then you're talking about Kittle there with the run game kind of being, Jeff Wilson will be catching some steam, but Tevin Coleman and McKinnon still being there. Like, I just don't want to have to guess on those guys. So that game is interesting to me too there. But yeah, it'll be a fun slate. Best of luck to everybody who is playing on Saturday. And, hope, if it doesn't go that well for you, then you got the Sunday slate. So hopefully you run the pod back, listen to where we were at on week 16, and then make your money back or make some profit. And even if you do, spike on Saturday and have a good day, take some of that profit and use it in week 16 on the main slate on Sunday. Guys, we're signing off for everybody. Shout out to everybody who helped us reach that 1K plus plateau now on YouTube. We really appreciate all the subscribers there, all the 1,000. And if you aren't part of that, get in on it, because they are eligible to win the Allen Robinson jersey tomorrow. Signed Allen Robinson jersey there for being a subscriber. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the Fantasy Authority channel. You guys get any last words for the people as we sign off here for the holiday season?
No, good luck today. Maybe the DFS gods will bring some of our subscribers a late Christmas present this year. And speaking of late, make sure your flex has the latest start times for today's slate, because you can get weird if your early guys bust. So just make sure you got latest time in the flex. Absolutely.
Kev, you got anything?
No, just let's run hot. Let's have a great, end of the weekend. We still got a few more days left for this Christmas weekend, and one of the better times of the year as well with the NFL DFS playoffs. That is fucking fantastic every single year. It's one of my favorite weeks or month to play DFS because of just how fun that is. Between the 2 days of football, having the sweat your fucking ass off between the day one and day two of the weekend.
Absolutely.
So, and like I said at the beginning, I really appreciate everybody that supported us this year, everybody that has been rocking with us. We've put in a lot of work, but we also appreciate all the feedback we've gotten, and we're just getting fucking started, boys and girls. So, 2021 is going to be huge for us. And I really want to say, I really appreciate as well all the help of Cody this year. He has been huge for us, and all the help he's given me with editing and everything else. So I really just can't tell him I appreciate him enough as well. So
absolutely,
shout out Cody.
Yeah. So that's all I got. Everybody have a great rest of the weekend. Let's fucking win some money.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. It's DJ Nation podcast, guys. You listen to the Week 16 DraftKings NFL DFS breakdown. We'll be back next week for Week 17, the ugly Week 17 as it always is, but we'll still be here breaking it down for you guys, having fun. Signing off for the boys, the Godfather himself at Fantasy Craft 13, Mr. Kevin Steele there, Maddie DFS. On Twitter is where you can find him, Matty2v2, Matty Gets Buckets, and myself, Ryan Williams, on Twitter. You can find me at RyanAlexander_W. It's a DJ Nation podcast. We'll catch you guys next week for episode 96. But until then, have fun, get this money. We'll see you.